Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today to talk a bit about survival games. What I really wanted to focus on today were some of the things that I love about survival game experiences and some of the things that I hate about survival game experiences that I would love to see changed or altered or repaired as the genre continues to grow and as people continue to make games for them. It seems like it's never going to stop. There's always someone out there looking to make the next great survival game. Of course, a couple of the ones on my list right now include Escape from Tarkov, which actually looks fantastic and looks to be doing quite a few things substantially different than most of the other survival games on the market. Anyways, before we get any more distracted with what looks like what could potentially be a fantastic game instead of Escape from Tarkov, let's get back to the love-hate aspects of my experiences with open world survival games. Now, most open world survival games, at least some of the big ones that I can think of, Rust, DayZ, Miscreated, H1Z1, are multiplayer or PvP focused experiences that sometimes have PvE elements and sometimes don't have PvE elements. And I guess this is where we could start by talking about two straight up positives and negatives. I, for one, personally love the PvP aspect of just about all of these open world survival games. Rust, for one, is absolutely fantastic because of the player versus player nature of the experience, and most of the player basis for Rust is pretty damn ballistic, leading to some awesome moments. I don't think I've ever walked away from a session of Rust without some wonderful little story to tell. I could play the game for 30 minutes or for 3 hours, and I usually walk away with something that made me laugh, made me frustrated, or made me happy. And all of those emotions are okay with me when I'm playing an open world survival game. Now, the other side of that is that most of these games don't feature a strong PvE component, and that really frustrates me. You know, DayZ has been struggling with its zombie implementation for a very long time. I don't think H1Z1 ever really found its own personality with the way it did zombies. And in the instance of Rust, Gary Newman pretty much from the start said that they didn't really want to have zombies. And I think in the case of Rust, the game works better without a PvE component, but that doesn't mean that I don't yearn for a great survival game that blends PvP and PvE combat seamlessly in a fantastic fashion. I mean, just imagine being able to go out and hunt down a group of AI bandits with your buddies, all while being concerned about the existence of other players potentially looking to do the same thing. The tension that could exist in a moment like that would be absolutely fantastic. I would love to see a game just go more all out on the AI PvE aspect. And of course, it gives players something to do on both sides of the coin. If you want to deal with PvP stuff, go ahead. If you want to focus more on the PvE, you can. The idea of blending those two together, to me, would be absolute bliss and harmony. It's something that Escape from Tarkov is looking to attempt with its game, but I haven't got my hands on it, so I can't speak on it further than that. Hopefully one day I'll be able to play it, and maybe it'll be that PvE, PvP combined experience that I've been looking for. Now, we can't really talk about open world survival games without talking about just how big and dull and boring they can often be. Walk here, gather this, stick my W key down with some glue, maintain this, manage that. It's just kind of the nature of these games, and I have to admit that none of them would be what they are if you didn't have to spend time gathering equipment and crafting components. I actually really like these components, but what I don't like is how often the developer integrates these components without respecting the player's time. I think it is possible, and I think Rust has shown that it's possible, to strike an even balance between maintaining that sort of overtime experience, you know, that feeling of, man, you know, there's time has passed, I'm really invested in my character and in this experience. You know, you want the player to feel like they've gone through effort to gain the things that they acquire in a survival game experience. But you don't want them to feel like they had to waste countless hours of their real life simply mashing the left mouse click or holding the W key forward to acquire those things. You know, you want them to feel like they had a sense of purpose behind everything that they've done, and you want them to have nothing, or at least mostly, positive memories behind their experience once it ends. Whether they walk away or whether they're killed, you don't want them to look back and say, damn, that really wasn't worth my time. That is an issue that most survival games seem to have. I think DayZ struggles with this. I think even my time with H1Z1 showed that game struggling with it. I do feel that my experience with Rust, even since its early days, before it went full Unity, before all of the changes, have always been relatively good. And I think that's just the PvP nature of the game. Rust has a really good player base, a really good environment with a lot of tools within its sandbox. There's lots of opportunities for the player to roleplay, to take their own path. So again, I never really feel like I wasted my time, because usually the journey to that 4 or 5 hour mark where I might die or where I might stop playing is filled with really great moments. On top of that, the game never really asks too much of me when it comes to crafting or gathering supplies. I don't feel like I have to spend 4.5 hours chopping down trees just to build a small wooden hut. The devs at Facepunch really seem to want to respect the player's time. I think they're doing a good job of that. So it can be done. I just wish that more games would go out and do that. Now, one of my favorite things about big survival games is inventory management. I know this really goes one way or another for most people. Some of you guys really hate having to sift through all of that gear and inventory, but let me kind of point out what I consider the strongest side of complex inventory management in survival games. It's not really just about having a grid system and having to decide whether or not this gun fits in your backpack, or I don't have a big enough jacket, or so on and so forth. It's about the tension and the choices that the player is forced to make because of those limitations. For example, in DayZ, you walk into the police station, you went all the way there, knowing that there was a high chance that you might finally pick up your first firearm with your fresh spawn. You're confronted with two options. Do I take the pistol that has no ammunition? Or do I take the shotgun that also has no ammunition? I can fit the pistol into my backpack and potentially carry more stuff down the road, or I can carry the shotgun and take up more of my backpack, but maybe there's a better chance of finding shotgun ammunition. Or maybe it's even worse of a situation, and there's a water bottle and a pistol with no ammunition, and there's a shotgun with ammunition. Now I can either take the pistol with no ammunition and the water bottle and have something to drink 10 minutes from now when I'm likely to start getting thirsty and possibly die of dehydration, or can I just say screw all of that and finally have a gun to walk around with and shoot someone in the face? It's those choices that are forced upon the player that make inventory management such a big deal to me. I like having an inventory. I like having it be limited to some factor. It's a big part of the tension that these survival games have on a moment-to-moment basis, and they simply wouldn't be what they are without that. I would never want someone to remove that. All of the negatives that an inventory management system might carry, for me, are greatly outweighed by the positives. Now, you can't have a survival game without death. At the end of the day, you're eventually going to stop playing, or you're going to die. Now, that death, of course, can come in many forms. You can be killed by another player in most instances. Some games have weather or elements that you have to deal with, like rainstorms and snowstorms. You might freeze to death, you might die of thirst, you might die of hunger. One way or another, you will most likely die. When you die, a couple things can happen considering the game or the type of experience you might be playing. In most instances, that's it. Your character's dead, you drop all of your gear right there on the ground, and if you're lucky enough, you might be able to hike your way back to that position and recover that gear before bandits or other players actually go ahead and steal it. Now, the way that death is handled in these games, I think, very much goes on a player-to-player basis. Some people really like the idea of losing their gear and having to hunt it down again. For me, I'm one of those people. I like that super high risk. For me, the payoff is the constant tension. You know, just the basic idea of dying and losing everything I've acquired is a huge part of the adrenaline rush that comes with playing a survival game in that type of setting. You know, getting in a close quarters firefight, deciding whether or not to engage a group of 2 or 3 players walking through the woods in a game like DayZ, even though you know you have the firepower and the position to potentially tank them down, but not willing or not wanting to really take that risk because of all the gear that you have, because of everything you've acquired over the last hour or 2 days even. That's what makes permadeath special. That's what makes losing all of your gear right there and right then special. That just constant element of risk and fear. And survival games would not be survival games without that for me. Whether we're talking about a single player or a multiplayer setting, that's a really big deal to me. But I know a lot of you guys feel one way or the other about that. Some people want to be able to maintain their gear or maintain some element of what they've earned for their player. And there's some games that do that. You know, Rust allows you to maintain your blueprints and your overall experience, so you can craft those blueprints early on without having to gain XP. Some games have, features where you don't lose anything. Maybe you just lose cash. A lot of games have handled it differently over the last, 5 or 6 years. It's really personal preference on that. And I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this entire discussion. What are some of your favorite parts of survival games, and what are some of your least favorite parts of survival games? Where do you think the genre can improve? Where would you like to see it improve? And where do you think it's already doing a damn fine job? Either way, let me know whatever you have to say down in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one.